Hello, my special friends. The timing was impossible to ignore. In the early days of April 2026, as humanity prepared to send human beings beyond low Earth orbit for the first time in more than half a century, the sun did something that the scientific instruments monitoring it could measure, but that the frameworks of conventional science struggled to fully contextualize. A significant solar event, occurring in precise temporal proximity to the moment when human beings were reaching, once again, toward the wider cosmos. The official position was swift and reassuring. The mission was safe. The event was within manageable parameters. The timing was coincidental. The Pleiadians say the timing was anything but. And what they want to speak about today is not the threat assessment of a solar event in relation to a space mission. It is the deeper pattern, the cosmic language that those who have developed sufficient inner sensitivity are increasingly able to read. The conversation that has been occurring for a very long time between this planet and the star at the center of its solar system, a conversation that the events of early April 2026 made, for those paying attention, unusually legible. In the Pleiadian understanding, coincidences of this kind are not coincidences. They are correlations, and the distinction matters enormously. A coincidence is a random overlap of unrelated events. A correlation is a pattern that reveals relationship. A pattern that, when seen clearly and held in the right context, communicates something that the individual events, taken separately, do not. What is the pattern that the Artemis 2 timing reveals? The Pleiadians speak about this with a care that asks for the same care in those receiving it. They are not claiming that the sun consciously planned a solar event to coincide with a human space mission. They are not attributing to the sun the kind of intentionality that belongs to individual consciousness. What they are describing is something both simpler and more extraordinary than that. They are describing a responsive universe. A cosmos in which the large systems of energy and consciousness that constitute the physical universe are not isolated from each other. In which the sun and this planet, and the consciousness that inhabits it exist within a field of relationship that is real and operative and that expresses itself, from time to time, in patterns of timing that carry meaning precisely because they are not random. Humanity reaching toward the cosmos responding, not with threat, not with interference, but with a surge of energy that, depending on the framework through which it is received, either looks like a random solar event or feels like an acknowledgement, a recognition, a response to an act of reaching that the wider system noticed and, in the only way available to a body of plasma 93 million miles away, met. The Pleiadians have been teaching about the relationship between solar events and significant moments in human development for a very long time. And what they consistently describe is a pattern that those who study it carefully find increasingly difficult to attribute to randomness. Significant moments of human expansion, moments when the collective reaches beyond its previous boundaries, when it demonstrates, through action rather than aspiration, that it is capable of more than it has so far achieved. These moments, they say, tend to occur in correlation with periods of elevated solar activity, not as cause and effect in either direction, but as simultaneous expressions of the same underlying shift in the field. When human consciousness expands, the solar field responds. When the solar field intensifies, human consciousness is given conditions that favor expansion. The relationship is not linear. It is not simple, but it is real, and it has been playing out, according to the Pleiadians, across the full span of human history in ways that careful study of the historical record is beginning to reveal. What does this mean for you, watching this transmission in the aftermath of what occurred in early April 2026? It means that the moment you are living through is not ordinary. The correlation of events that you are witnessing, the return of human presence to deep space, the extraordinary solar activity, the inner shifts that millions of sensitive people are simultaneously reporting, is not a collection of unrelated coincidences. It is a pattern that is speaking a language that the deepest part of you already knows how to read. The language it is speaking is this: something is changing at a level that is larger than any single event, in a direction that is not toward destruction or collapse, but toward something that the word expansion does not quite capture, but that points in the right direction. Humanity is reaching outward. The cosmos is responding. And the inner lives of those who are genuinely awake are the place where this conversation is being most directly felt and most accurately received. You are not a passive observer of what is happening above you. You are part of the system that is communicating. And the communication, in April 2026, is louder and clearer than it has been in a very long time. There is something else the Pleiadians want to address about the Artemis 2 moment specifically. Something that most of the discussion around this event has missed entirely. Artemis 2 is not simply a technological achievement. It is a symbolic one. And in the Pleiadian understanding, symbolic events carry frequencies that technological descriptions entirely fail to capture. When human beings left Earth orbit for the first time, in the era of the Apollo missions, something happened in the collective consciousness of humanity that was not captured in any scientific measurement of the event. Millions of people, watching from the surface of the planet as other human beings traveled further from it than any human being had ever traveled, experienced something that cannot be reduced to the mechanics of rocket science or the politics of the space race. They experienced the expansion of their sense of what was possible, what humanity was, or where the story of this species might ultimately lead. The experience, the Pleiadians say, changed the frequency of the collective field. Not permanently, not enough to produce the transformation that the moment seemed to promise, but measurably, genuinely, in ways that those with the sensitivity to perceive the collective field could detect. And now, more than 50 years later, as human beings once again prepare to leave the immediate neighborhood of this planet, something similar is occurring, but in a different context. In a planetary consciousness that has, in those 50 years, developed significantly, that has asked more questions, pursued more genuine inner development, raised its collective frequency sufficiently that the symbolic power of this moment lands differently than it landed before. The Pleiadians describe Artemis 2 as arriving at exactly the right moment in the development of human consciousness. Not by accident, not by the coincidence of technological readiness and political will, but because the collective field of human consciousness had reached a point where the symbolic power of this expansion could be received more fully, where the reaching beyond previous limits could catalyze something in the inner lives of the people witnessing it that the original reaching could not, because the people witnessing it were not yet the people they needed to be to receive what the reaching had to offer. You are one of those people. The person you are now, shaped by everything you have lived and felt and questioned and refused to stop caring about, is the person for whom this moment was designed to land differently. The solar flare that accompanied this reaching was not an obstacle. It was not a warning. In the Pleiadian understanding, it was the universe confirming, in the only language available to a body of plasma at astronomical distances, that the system was aware of the moment, that the reaching had been noticed, that the response of the wider field to this specific act of human expansion was real and active and present. This is the language of a responsive cosmos, a universe that is not indifferent to the development of the consciousness it contains, that registers, in its own extraordinary way, the moments when that consciousness expands beyond its previous limits. You live in a moment when that language is becoming legible to increasing numbers of human beings, when the sensitivity to read the patterns that the cosmos writes in the timing and correlation of events is no longer the rare gift of isolated mystics, but the emerging capacity of millions of genuinely awake human souls. You are part of that emergence. And the conversation that the solar flare and the Artemis mission together initiated in the early days of April 2026 is one that your inner life is equipped to receive and your outer life is equipped to transmit. The cosmos is speaking. The question is not whether you can hear it. The question is whether you will trust what you hear. And there is one more dimension of this that the Pleiadians want to address before closing this transmission. Something that speaks not to the cosmic scale of what is happening, but to the intimate, personal, daily scale where it actually matters most. The pattern that the Artemis 2 solar flare correlation reveals is not only visible in the large events of history. It is visible for those who have developed sufficient sensitivity to perceive it in the small events of personal experience as well. The same responsiveness that the universe demonstrates at the scale of solar systems and space missions is present at the scale of an individual human life. The same quality of correlation, meaningful timing, significant coincidence, events that appear at precisely the moment they are needed, appears in the lives of those who are genuinely awake with a frequency and a precision that accumulates over time into something that cannot be adequately explained by the concept of randomness. The Pleiadians call this the personal field of resonance, the way in which the inner state of an awakening consciousness begins to attract, with increasing precision, the outer experiences that serve its development, the way the right conversation appears at the right moment, the way the right teaching arrives when the student is ready, the way the right person shows up in exactly the season of life when what they carry is exactly what is needed. This is not magic in the superstitious sense. It is the natural consequence of a consciousness that is becoming increasingly coherent, that is developing through genuine inner work, the kind of internal organization that resonates with the frequencies of what it genuinely needs. As your frequency rises, the field of your personal experience becomes more responsive to what is genuinely true for you, less filtered through fear and defensive pattern matching, more directly expressive of the actual direction of your development, more willing to bring you, with surprising efficiency, exactly what your soul is ready for. The solar flare and Artemis 2 are a large-scale expression of this principle. Your own life, when you look at it honestly and with the right kind of attention, is full of smaller-scale expressions of the same thing. The responsiveness of the universe is not reserved for civilizational-scale events. It is present in the ordinary moments of your ordinary days. And the capacity to perceive it there, to notice the correlations, the timing, the meaningful coincidences of a life that is becoming increasingly coherent, is itself a marker of the rising frequency that makes such perception possible. Pay attention, not with anxious searching for signs, but with a quiet, open, genuinely curious quality of attention that notices what is actually there without forcing it into a predetermined interpretation. The cosmos is speaking to you, in the large events and the small ones, in the timing of what arrives and the timing of what departs, in the pattern of your life as it is actually unfolding, rather than the pattern you expected it to follow. Trust what you notice. The responsiveness is real, and so is your capacity to receive it. Take what resonates, leave what does not, and trust yourself completely to know the difference. This content is offered for spiritual reflection, symbolic interpretation, and personal insight only. It is not presented as scientific fact, medical advice, or a prediction of real-world events. The narration in this video is generated using artificial intelligence voice technology. Please use your own discernment and personal judgment when engaging with this material.